Hi, I'm Nick Golis, owner of Family Canine Dog Training. Welcome to Conversations with a Dog Trainer. If you've got a puppy or young dog that you're thinking of taking to a dog park, or if you've got an older dog and you're already going there, let's take a look at what goes on in dog parks and see if this is really a good fit for you and what you want for you and your dog. So I get asked all the time, should I take my dog to the dog park? The easy answer for me is to just say no. I'd much rather educate and inform people on the pros and cons, and then people are making a more informed decision. Give you some insight and experience as to what goes on there, and also what I've seen over the course of being a dog trainer for 30 years. So first and foremost, why do we bring our dogs to the dog park? Exercise and socialization. So let's take a look at that. The exercise part, I get. Dogs need to run. You may not have a fenced backyard. You may live in a very urban environment. You may need a spot for your dog to run. I get that part. I am not disputing it. There are other ways to give your dog exercise though. The socialization part is where it gets wonky. And this is what people don't understand. Just throwing dogs together is not socialization. True socialization is not even necessarily only dog to dog. True socialization is teaching the dog to feel comfortable in his or her skin in a multitude of scenarios with a multitude of stimuli around them. So dog to dog socialization is just one tiny aspect. Now, when you go into a dog park, there are many different forms and shapes and layers and complexities attached to all this socialization, because all the other dogs are variables, they're unknowns. And I get that you may have your usuals, your regulars that you know, but there are still unknowns. So what happens there is you bring your dog in, and let's assume you have a very friendly dog, a very socially open dog, likes to interact with the world around it. Now you're going to have a mixture of other dogs in there. You're going to have other dogs like yours that are going to be a good fit. That's one. Then you're going to have the more mellow dogs that are maybe social, but they just kind of want to putter around and sniff, and they don't do much of anything. If that's the only candidate for your dog, and your dog is a very playful dog, your dog may start to pester the older dog. That can lead to a conflict. It may not, but it can. Then you have dogs that are rough players. They're not necessarily, there's no bad intent, but they play very, very rough, like little rugby players, and they can really overwhelm some dogs. Then you have dogs that are borderline, kind of touchy-feely, meaning they'll play, but they can kind of flip on you. Then you have dogs that are dominant, that depending on how they're approached, their answer is going to be very different. Then you have dogs that are flat out aggressive, and if you think I'm kidding, then you haven't spent enough time in a dog park. If you could read my emails on any given day, a lot of them start with, we have a wonderful, and the person is just telling me all about the nice qualities of their dog. And they're winding me up, and I know where it's going. Took our dog to a dog park. Our dog was bullied, threatened, or even worse, attacked, injured. Now our dog is reactive or even possibly aggressive towards other dogs. This never needed to happen. And it's the indiscriminate pairing of dogs that goes on in a dog park that is very problematic. Whereas if you have a nice, socially open, friendly puppy, or adult dog, doesn't matter, and your friend or your neighbor does, and you were to put them together in your backyards, that's a much less volatile situation. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that would be a lot of fun for the dogs, and quite frankly, the humans enjoy it too. We watch our dogs playing, we see them enjoying themselves, and we feel good. Whereas when you go into the park and you just put your dog with whatever's there, anything goes. And it can go wrong a number of ways. So the obvious one is that the dog is attacked, or maybe not attacked, but threatened. So the perception of the attack is there, and to the dog that is very real. Depending on the type of dog you have, if you have a very resilient dog, kind of dog that just shrugs things off, just like with some people, something bad can happen. Some people shrug things off easier than others. Then your dog might not really be impacted by that. If you have a more sensitive dog, now you may have a dog that hides behind you, or doesn't want to go out. I've seen that with some clients. Dog does not want to leave the house. I worked with a client years ago whose Doberman, a really big, powerful looking dog, but really a softie. He was charged by an off-leash dog on the sidewalk in front of their house one day. And it took a lot of work for us to get him to feel safe to go back outside. He wasn't hurt. He wasn't physically hurt. He was emotionally bothered and psychologically hurt. And it took us a lot of work to get him back to where he felt good about going outside. So the perception sometimes can be just as powerful as the actual physical attack, even if that doesn't occur. Then in a best case scenario where things do go wrong, there's no attack, no intent to bully, but we have a dog that's too playful, too wild, coming onto a more insecure or more sensitive, or possibly just a much more docile dog that just wants to walk around and sniff around. What happens there is the very playful dog, dogs don't always read each other's signals very well, just like some people. Imagine if we're having a conversation and let's say that you're my coffee cup and I'm standing this close to you. And every time I start to talk, you back up, and all I do is I say, oh, I got to move forward. And then you back up and I got to move forward. After a while, you'd be like, what's wrong with this guy? He's not listening to the subtleties and the cues that I'm dropping here. Some dogs don't pick it up. To some dogs, when they try to play with another dog and the other dog is disinterested or hiding, going under a bench, behind the owner, in between the owner's legs, the playful dog says, I just got to try harder. They don't get what a good time they're missing out on. Now I've got to jump on them. I've got to bark at them. Maybe I've got to pull on their collar a little. All with good intention. Dog just wants to play. He's like, I'm having a party, you come join me. It doesn't always mean that the dog that's receiving that signal wants that signal. And now we have a mismatch. We have two really nice dogs, but they're not fit for one another. So even in a scenario like that, your dog could walk away with a really negative experience and then start to become defensive around other dogs, start to have big reactions, even just out on a walk, because, oh, no, don't let dogs near me. That's going to be a problem. I learned already that when dogs get near me, it gets uncomfortable really fast. And despite all my efforts and my polite ways of trying to negotiate things, it doesn't work out. So you've got to watch out, because even in a best case scenario, it can get messy. Again, if you want to have your dog and a friend or a neighbor's dog play together, that's a different thing. The other thing we have to factor in is familiarity. Gives us comfort, right? It does in our day-to-day interactions, and it certainly does for dogs. So one example that I'll use with clients very often when I'm explaining this is I'll ask them, would you be comfortable if I hugged you right now? And if people are being honest, they kind of step back and they look at me a little funny. They're like, no. It's okay, good. That's kind of the answer I was hoping for, because I'm going to use it now to illustrate something. There are people in your life that can hug you that you're not only comfortable with, but that you want the hug because you're familiar with them. You know them, you trust them, you have a history and a bond. Some dogs need that in order to feel comfortable. Again, you may have that very socially open dog, and great, your dog may want to play with any and everyone. But some dogs need that familiarity in order to do well. And if they're playing with a dog they know well, they can take things a lot easier. They can be more forgiving of things. They can be more tolerant of things because there is that familiarity there. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, let's look at another aspect. There are people there that bring their dogs to a dog park that know full well their dogs don't get along well with other dogs. I understand what they're trying to do. They're hoping that by continuing to bring their dog there, that the dog will start to get used to being around other dogs and enjoy the company of other dogs. But that isn't how it works. What they're doing is the bizarro version of socializing. I'm just thinking and trying to find a polite way to word it, because it makes no sense. You see, if your car brakes don't work, then you don't just drive the car hoping they'll work. And if you have an injury, and I'm pointing at my shoulder because I have an injured shoulder. If you have an injury and you don't go to physio and you don't do the stretching and the exercises, we can't just expect it to get better on its own. If it does, you're very lucky because this hasn't. So with dogs, I get emails all the time. Someone says, my dog has a history of charging other dogs, attacking other dogs, doesn't like this breed, or when a dog does this, that to it. So I keep going to dog parks in hopes of what they're actually doing is they're actively training their dog to be more aggressive around other dogs. Because without the proper behavioral intervention, the dog is only going to do more of what it's already doing. Let's look at it separate of a dog park and separate of aggression. If we sit down at a table and there's 4 of us and the dog goes to 3 people and no one feeds the dog, and then the dog comes to me and I give it a piece of chicken, we all know that the next time we're in that scenario, the dog's going to go straight to me because that's where the reward lies. That's where the payday is, right? That's a very easy one to comprehend. Now, in the case of a dog being aggressive and we're continuing to put the dog in the same scenario without altering anything, so we're recreating the exact same thing for the dog but expecting a different outcome, we're only going to solidify what the dog is doing. It's like cement that is now curing and drying and becoming concrete. It's just solid. Whereas before it was softer and we could kind of reshape it and pass that thing along the top to edge out any imperfections in the surface, right? That's what training is, where we're working and we're shaping and we're modifying and we're doing things. So there are people that are bringing their dogs to a dog park knowing full well that their dog doesn't get along well with other dogs. And all of the happy-go-lucky playful dogs, they are the crash test dummies for those dogs. And it's unfortunate, but that is just the reality. So be aware of that if you're going to dog parks. And if you're going, and if you're absolutely hell-bent on going, be prepared to pack it in sometimes. Life isn't fair. You may have the nicest, happiest dog. And you may have a dog that by all rights should be the one to stay and play in a dog park. And someone else brings in this fire-breathing dragon. Grab your dog and get the hell out of there. Nothing good will come of that. It's not about right or wrong at that point. It's protect your dog in the moment and protect your future dog in terms of your dog's behavior. Let's look at another aspect. What about the health? Viruses and parasites run rampant in dog parks. You've got to watch out for that. You don't know that the other dogs are vaccinated. You don't know that the other dogs are parasite-free. Then we sometimes have these communal water bowls. Don't get me started on that. Okay, I don't think if we were sitting next to one another in Starbucks, we would all grab 1 cup of coffee, even if it was big enough for everyone. We'd be like, gross. So think about that, okay? And even if you're bringing your own water bowl, the viruses and the parasites, believe me, they are still there. Then we get to the last 2 parts that are maybe not so obvious. Part 1. The average population in a dog park, it's full of dog lovers. That's nice because you're with your kind. So there's a kinship and a bond, and we all laugh at one another's dogs and we exchange funny stories, and someone's going to grab a handful of cookies and go, here guys. And if you don't think so, I've seen it happen firsthand. What do you think's going to happen at some point? They're going to behave like animals because they are animals. Same thing when someone brings treats that are only for their dog. I've seen that too. And now another dog is going to go around. I've seen owners get really upset. Get your dog away. These treats are for my dog. You're in a dog park. You've got to expect a little bit of that. Now, what happens if the other dog takes offense? The owner taking offense is one thing, and, a couple of rude words isn't good, sticks and stones. But what if the other dog takes offense to the treat, to the toy? It's amazing to me that people still go to dog parks with treats and toys. And I use treats and toys in my training. But I would not bring it there because it's going to draw attention to them in a very unfavorable way from the other dogs. And it's going to create conflict. Okay? Go online, look up resource guarding. Dogs will resource guard just about anything. A stick, a patch of grass, a reflection, right? Some OCD dogs, a watch, a ring, you name it. So if you don't think they're going to resource guard their food and their toys, they are animals and it absolutely will happen. The other downside to the dog-loving population in the dog park is they are very likely to undo some of the good habits you're working on with your dog, namely teaching your dog not to jump up. Now, I can tell you after 30 years of being a dog trainer, that is one of the most common problems people have with their dogs. Again, with that very socially open dog. My little puppy is 12 weeks old. He loves the world. He is socially open. I saw it in him right from 7 weeks. I went to go see his litter. Okay, I drove 10 hours to the breeder's place to see the litter because there were certain qualities I was looking for in my puppy. And socially open is definitely one of them. I really like that aspect in my own dogs. So I saw that in him and his litter mates. They all were cut from that cloth. So now you go into the dog park with your socially open dog and you're working on teaching your dog not to jump. And someone sees your dog in there. My God, Murphy, you're so cute. Look how much you've grown. First thing Murphy does, Murphy jumps. And you say, Murphy, get off, or whatever you're saying to your dog. And what do you think the person's doing when Murphy's jumping? I missed you, buddy. I missed you. What does that do to Murphy? That's information that Murphy holds on to. Greeting people is a gonzo state of 800 on 10. Okay, am I making my point clear enough? And the world reinforces to me that I'm absolutely correct in this belief system that I'm developing. And the person back there, my Uber to the dog park, they're nuts. They don't get it. They don't get the fun that me and this person are having. Why are they telling me to get off? Look at how much attention, affection, praise, treats, hugs I'm getting for jumping up. Why would I listen to that? In other words, why would I work for a quarter when I get tipped $1,000 for jumping? You're offering me a quarter for not jumping. You're offering me low-level stuff. So dog parks are not the greatest place to train your dog. Sure, they're full of distractions, but it's a very unscripted environment full of very volatile distractions. So I use distractions in training all the time. My little puppy has a tremendous recall. I started training his recall, I would say, in the second week that I had him, and he runs to me like a rocket. And I could even recall him while my wife or daughter are holding a handful of his kibble, and he eats like a savage. So a handful of kibble to him is really meaningful. So now there's the social component because it's a person there and they're kneeling down and they're talking to him. There's the food in their hand that they're holding, and I can still recall him. So don't tell me that we're going there for distraction because it's the wrong kind. And we can create distractions, and we can go out and find distractions, and we can structure things. And training has to have a structure. We can't just go out and freeform it. That is not going to work well. So think about how people will impact your dog behaviorally and what the consequences of that will be. The same way if the dog is jumping on the bench and the person is sitting there reading their paper, because I see that in dog parks too. And now the dog climbs into their lap. And then the person, oh, you're so cute, Murphy. I don't know why I'm picking on Murphy today. Just understand, it comes at a cost. This is what I'm trying to say. And then the last thing I want to talk about behaviorally, I want my dog or my puppy, right? I bought this dog, I brought this dog into my life to have a bond and a connection and a relationship with. And I want to be the fun provider. I'm not necessarily going to be the only thing my dog enjoys. As a young puppy, though, I do want to shape things in that way. And then once everything is set, you know, that cement that I'm talking about, once the cement starts to look like I like it to look, go for it. But in the beginning, yes, I do want to be the center of my puppy's universe. And we are going to have fun. You are going to play today. You're going to play with me. And when I go out and socialize my dog, I have a very structured way that I socialize my dog. In terms of exposure to noise and sights and sounds and people and dogs. And in the beginning, what I'm teaching my dog is all of that is okay. It's part of the world we live in. And the stuff that's a little weird and scary, we're going to go and investigate it so you understand it's not weird and scary. And the stuff that's very exciting and gets your pulse going, it's not as exciting as you believe it is, rather. Everything is here. Why would I do that? Well, come read my emails for a week. And this would be true for any dog trainer. Reactivity is at an all-time high. And a lot of that is because the misinformation that is out there, especially when it comes to socializing a dog, is wild. It is cuckoo bananas wild. And we think that socialization means that my dog has to meet and interact with every person and every dog. And then what do you think happens after a while? We have conditioned the dog that every person, every dog is the big deal that you initially believed it to be. And then we have a dog that cannot focus on the handler, cannot remain engaged. Okay, if you want to see engagement, I'll put up clips of my little puppy. It's hard for me to shake him off. That is a tremendous problem to have. He's 3 months old. It is a gorgeous problem to have when you're training a dog. That the dog is so engaged, that the dog is just eyeballing you the whole time. I could already almost walk him into a parked car because he's watching my face so much. That's not a problem. I'll never walk him into a parked car. But the point is, he's very, very focused here. In fact, I ran into a client the other day with her dog. She lives in the area. And the dog she has now is not the one I trained. He has passed away a few years ago. So she's got a young dog. He's about a year old. And we stopped to chat. And naturally, she's asking me questions about my puppy. And I think he was about 10 weeks old at the time. And her dog looked to be like the one I'm talking about all along today, socially open. And my dog didn't really look that way. My dog just looked like he was bored with the whole thing and he was watching me. And while I'm talking to her, I'm engaged with my puppy too. Because if I want engagement, I have to give engagement. In the form of attention, in the form of touch, in the form of food rewards, in the form of toys. I never need toys with me that time. But all the other stuff, you better believe it. Because I am continuing to develop a belief system in my puppy that this is all here. And she says, my God, look at him. It's so easy for you. And it's easy in the sense of I know what I'm doing, but it's still work. I can't skip steps because the laws of learning, the principles of learning apply to me. Just because I don't have to hire someone, I just have to get to work and do it. And this is one of the benefits of not farming out my dog's exercise and socialization. We play tug. I have a video up on that. We play fetch, same video. We run around. I'm going to start getting him accustomed to my bike. Of course, he's a baby, so we're going to go little bit. At first, I'll just be walking him next to a bike just so it doesn't weird him out. We do all sorts of stuff together. I got a dog because I want to interact with a dog. I want to have shared experiences with my dog. I want that bond. And quite frankly, it would break my heart if my dog preferred the company of every stranger and every strange dog to interacting with me. That's not to say that he shouldn't enjoy the interaction. But if we're looking at a hierarchy or a preference, it's like you offer me this or carrot juice. It's a no-brainer. Give me the coffee. If there's nothing else at all, I'll take the carrot juice. I won't love it, but it'll do. So I want to be the cup of coffee for my dog. I want to be the endorphin rush, the dopamine hit, the emotional closeness, all of that stuff. And when we take our dogs to dog parks, and that is the highlight of their day, then what happens is the flip-flop of what we would want. And all of the fun and excitement is just play, 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 dog, dog, dog. There are people that contact me that say, my dog knows the walk to the dog park or the drive to the dog park, and starts getting really wild a block before on our walk. And I've trained with 16 trainers, but that last block he pulls like a rhino. Or the dog is spinning in circles in the back of my SUV as we're getting closer. Think of what the dog's mental and emotional state is in that moment. And that's because we've built it up to be such a highlight of their day. If, again, we go back to my example of the dog playing with a friend or neighbor's dog, and it's just part of the bigger picture of what you do, I would see that as a much healthier, much more balanced approach to living with a dog. Why not let your dog run around with a buddy? That's fun. I get it. It's kind of like balancing anything we do in our lives. I eat very healthy. I have to. I'm diabetic. So I follow a pretty regimented way of doing things. Once in a while, like yesterday, I was at my sister's family's place, and my nephew, it was his birthday. I had a piece of cake. And if I'm being honest, I had a second piece of cake. My numbers were fine because overall I manage really well. So take that as an example of, if we're smart and we use things in a balanced way, we're going to be fine with our dogs. I'm not anti-dog playing with another dog. What I am against is making that their raison d'être, their reason for living. Because if that's the case, there is something missing between me. Little break, my puppy needed to go out, little bathroom break, and we took some time to play as well. That also gave me the opportunity to refresh my coffee. And this mug, along with a very kind and thoughtful and generous Nespresso gift card, was a gift from clients of mine named Anne and Patrick with their lovely puppy Kobe. So thank you guys for that. A cup of coffee or several always is something sure to put a smile on my face. So while I was outside playing with my puppy, it was just reinforcing all the things that we've been talking about. My puppy runs over to me a million times. Sometimes he'll stop mid-pee to run over and be like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I don't play with him in that moment because I do want him to finish going to the bathroom, and I don't want to teach him to cut things short, as it were. But the point is, play with your dogs. Be the center of your dog's universe, especially when they're young. Take the time every day. My puppy's name is Hooligan. He's an English bulldog, and he's a pretty rambunctious little guy. So I take advantage of his energy every day in the form of playing some fetch, some tug, some obedience training, going for nice walks together. And he's a very socially open puppy, like I've referred to many times in this video. So what that means is he thinks the world's a pretty neat place. He's pretty excited to interact with people. And for now, because I know he's just built a certain way to be social, to be predisposed to liking and wanting to interact, I'm teaching him that all the fun is here, because I know that the nature of the dog and the quality of the dog is always going to be such that when it is time for him to be social, we don't need to help or massage that to bring it out of him. So that's in him, and I know that as a trainer, and therefore I'm letting it just kind of lie dormant because it'll always be there. It's just part of who he is. And so I am just taking advantage of this young age to influence him and to teach him to be very focused on me, very focused on our training and our work and making the work as fun as possible. Part of being a good dog trainer and a good leader with your dog is knowing how to sell something to the dog, right? So someone contacts me for a consult and I know that I can provide a solution for them. I don't say, yeah, I got it. Give me your money, problem solved, because that would be off-putting. Even if it was technically correct, even if I was right and I was able to give them the solution they wanted, it would turn them off, and then our chances of working together would be slim to none. And even if we work together, they might come in with a less than stellar attitude because, hey, this guy is arrogant and blah, blah. No, I read the email, I respond to it in a certain way, and I talk to people in the way that I would want to be spoken to. And so when I'm presenting something to my puppy, all this training stuff, These are my ideas, not his. What does a puppy do? They chase after a leaf in the wind. They follow their nose along the ground. They hunt for food. They look for an animal like a squirrel or a rabbit to chase outside. Yesterday he saw a horse for the first time. Cool. He thought it was pretty interesting. I'm more interesting. I know how to sell it. Okay? So sell these things to your dog and show your dog that you are a lot of fun to be with. And then later on, when you want to start opening the doors to the world, if you already had a social dog, that's going to be there. If you didn't, well, then this recipe isn't for you and we need to follow a different recipe. And it's very important to be working with a pro who knows what the right recipe for your dog is. In fact, this morning I was doing a Zoom consult with someone who's got a very, very fearful, very panicked young Italian Greyhound puppy. And one of the first things we talked about was just getting her dog out into the world and me giving her a recipe or a structure. And that recipe and structure for her puppy is going to be entirely different from what's going to work for my dog. Because we need to lubricate her dog and we need to sell to her why she wants to be out there. Because right now the dog just wants to be in the condo. No thank you very much to the rest of the world. That dog would have been very happy to be living at the very beginning of COVID where everybody stayed the heck away and she could just exist in her bubble with her owner. So if you've got that social dog, that's going to be there. If you've got a dog that needs help in other areas, get help. Know what you're doing with that dog. Know the game plan for that dog. But as far as showing the dog that fun exists away from you, because that is really the point we're at in this video, that is a mistake, especially early on. You want to create that foundation of fun and enjoyment, and adrenaline and dopamine is all here. This is it right here. It's like me walking in and, oh, that smell, right? And boom, I'm in already. I'm sold. So sell it to your dog. Show your dog that you are fun. Take the time to bond with your dog. Then later on, if you want to open up those doors to play with other dogs, to interact with people, all that stuff, great, go for it, and nothing bad will happen. And I'll give you one last example before I let you go today. You come to me with a puppy and you say, okay, I want the recipe for a well-behaved puppy, and I definitely don't want my puppy to beg at the table or to get excited when we're handling or preparing food. Should I feed my dog when I'm handling or preparing food or eating at the table? Of course, the answer is no. And then you run into me at a drive-through where these days I don't eat too much junk food, but back in the day I sure did. And back then I also used to have my business logo all over my vehicle. And you might have seen me with my Malinois or my Dutch Shepherd sitting in the passenger seat next to me and watching the two of us like complete animals wolfing down a burger. And you'd look at the logo on the vehicle and you'd say, I would never hire that guy. But that same dog that was just devouring a burger in my car, and I would always get my dogs in the past cheeseburger on their birthday. Plain, of course, no toppings. Those same dogs, if we're around food and it's not appropriate and the intent is that I'm not giving you some now, I could shut it down like that because of my training. Because I've taken the time to invest into the dog. The dog has a solid foundation and a base and an understanding of what's expected. And certain sounds that come out of my mouth have a real deep, impactful meaning to the dog. So I have that flexibility now, just like I was able to eat a couple of pieces of cake the other day. Now I have that flexibility with my older trained dog that, hey, today's your lucky day, you're getting a cheeseburger. And then later in the day, I'm eating something and it smells good and my dog is like, well, maybe, because earlier, no, not right now. And so in socializing, I do the same thing. I lock it down first. If we're talking about that socially open dog. Focus here, focus here, focus here. Fun, fun, fun. Develop the bond, develop the connection, develop the relationship. My little 12-week-old hooligan, he's got a lot of training already. I can recall him off leash. Is it perfect? No, of course not. We have miles and miles to go, but it's well underway. My dog would rather be with me. So when people are petting him and interacting with him, he'll often be wiggling and giving them his bum and doing the whole pretzel dog kind of thing. And then he'll just disconnect. Gotta go. Bye. My guy is there. It was nice. It was great. Text me your number, but I gotta go. So that is a result of the time, the bonding, the interaction, the quality of interaction. Right now, my dog is in another room in a puppy pen, and I'm here. He surely hears my voice. This interaction right now is meaningless. It is not a quality interaction. Just existing around your dog is not a quality interaction. Certainly being at an exciting place like a dog park where you stand around and the dog comes back and maybe checks in for a pat on the head or a treat and then takes off again, you're definitely not competing with the big guns out there. So think of how you want to frame your dog's view of what day-to-day life is and where all the fun and activity is. And then later on, we can open up those floodgates. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has given you a little bit of food for thought. And I'll surely see you in the next video if you stop back to check in, because there's a lot of topics I want to talk about with you folks. Okay, so until next time, take care.